Welcome to Bad Table Talk. I'm your host, Oliver Niehaus, and this is where we break down all of the current news and talk about everything you aren't supposed to talk about at the dinner table. That being politics, religion, money, and more. My goal with this series is to provide easy-to-listen, informative segments addressing the most pressing issues we face, and to start much-needed conversations as a result. As always, thanks go out to my friend Oscar Gregg for providing the music you hear, and you should all check out his single Acrobats, which will be linked in the podcast notes below. If you enjoy what you hear, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review, and feel free to also share your thoughts with me via email, which is linked below as well. So sit back and relax while I talk about how utterly fucked we are as a country. I'm totally kidding. Sort of. All joking aside, regardless of where you stand politically, I hope everyone is motivated by what they hear to research more about these issues and feels ready to contribute to making our nation a better place for everyone. Thank you and please enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to Bad Table Talk. I'm your host Oliver Niehaus, and we have a lot to cover in this segment, including Donald Trump's first day at Walter Reed. I say that because it is overwhelmingly likely that he will be rushed back in the near future. The vice presidential debate that just wrapped up, as well as the increasing likelihood that the Supreme Court will overturn same-sex marriage. Yeah, so let's jump right in. So per usual, Donald Trump is being Donald Trump, to put it simply, and decided to leave Walter Reed Hospital after only 4 days, and said in a tweet, and I quote, "Don't be afraid of COVID. Don't let it dominate your life. We have developed, under the Trump administration, some really great drugs and knowledge." Well, Mr. President, I can't imagine it's easy for the millions of Americans who have been infected and who have lost loved ones to your utter incompetence to stop it from dominating their life. The complete and utter lack of empathy or ability to show any sense of decency is astounding. This comes less than a week after he tested positive. I can't say I'm surprised by any of this. No one really can. He admitted to downplaying the virus, so why would he stop now? I honestly feel as if me saying these things and discussing the complete and total lack of empathy, decency, or simple care to keep the American people safe isn't even worth it at this point. He later, in a tweet and post on Facebook, said, and I quote again, "Flu season is coming up. Many people every year, sometimes over 100,000, and despite the vaccine, die from the flu. Are we going to close down our country? No, we have learned to live with it, just like we are learning to live with COVID. In most populations, far less lethal." He lies, and lies, and lies. This was indeed flagged by Twitter and removed by Facebook. This is what conservatives would call big tech censorship and a violation of their First Amendment rights. Yeah, no, this is just social media companies along with the rest of us getting fed up with their lies and bullshit, which actually cost lives here. According to the CDC, there has never been a year with even close to 100,000 flu deaths in the recent history, and in fact, it's rare for it to even reach 50,000. Once again, Trump compares the flu to COVID and actually says COVID is less deadly than the flu, despite this being categorically false. COVID-19 has a death rate between 3 and 4%, while the death rate for influenza is well below 0.1%. He also goes on to say that we are learning to live with COVID. I wonder if the families who have lost a loved one have learned to live with it. Frankly, I can't change your mind. If you are voting for Donald Trump or support him, God help you. And seriously, because this is no longer a question of whether you care about others, because that was made abundantly clear from the start, but whether you care about your own safety and your own life. If the virus found its way into the White House, the place where everyone is required to get tested to even enter, then you're completely benign if you think it won't find its way into yours. If the death of over 200,000 Americans wasn't enough for Republicans in particular to take this pandemic seriously, then nothing will. And the only way to potentially save hundreds of thousands of lives from being lost in the future is to get them out of office. If you aren't aware, Walter Reed Medical Facility is government run. It's funded by your taxpayer dollars and provides the best treatment in the country. It's almost as if state-of-the-art care and medicine is available to you, Mr. President, because you are the President of the United States. It's almost as if that comes with a few privileges not available to the average American. We don't know how much his stay at Walter Reed costed in total, but I can assure you it was at least several millions of dollars. Does he just think that every American has access to this care? I mean, they obviously don't, and he's against universal health care, and is in the process of trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which would strip health care away from 20 million Americans and jeopardize the care of those who have pre-existing conditions in the middle of a global pandemic that is his fault. On top of that, he just announced that he would soon be holding his big campaign rallies again, with no changes to guidelines for social distancing. I feel like I'm playing like a choose your own adventure game and I'm picking all the wrong decisions on purpose. If only it was a game, and not 200,000 real people. Mothers, fathers, doctors, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers. Tell that to the families of those people. I'm done being civil. I'm done trying to be respectful. Hell, I just got word that one of my friends got hospitalized for this. This is personal. So sorry if I'm not sending my thoughts and prayers to Donald Trump, because I'd trade his life for any of the innocent people who've died due to his selfishness and inaction. So during Trump's stay at Walter Reed, many of his supporters came to the hospital to show their support for him, and he just couldn't resist the opportunity to bask in their stupidity, so he demanded that he be driven by car past them so he could wave. He had his own little COVID parade. He just piles on selfish action after selfish action after selfish action. Obviously, there were other people in the car, being a driver, as well as Secret Service agents. And what makes this even worse is that each presidential vehicle is a literal breeding ground for spreading viruses and disease. The car is not only bulletproof, but also has sealing and coating to prevent against chemical attacks, making it nearly airtight. It's the perfect situation if you want to give someone COVID, or in the case of Trump, just couldn't care less. This is what James Phillips, an attending physician at Walter Reed, had to say about the decision. Every single person in the vehicle during that completely unnecessary presidential drive-by just now has to be quarantined for 14 days. They might get sick. They may die. For political theater. Commanded by Trump to put their lives at risk for theater. This is insanity. And Phillips echoes the sentiments I'm sure most of us are feeling. I honestly cannot imagine how hard it must be to be a doctor in the United States right now. Imagine going through all of that schooling, and money, and residency, and training, just to have a failed businessman and reality TV star that we somehow call the president tell you that you're wrong. Just a quick thanks to Dr. Fauci, Dr. Redfield, as well as any and all other doctors and frontline healthcare workers. Thank you for resembling all the traits not found in the president, putting others before yourselves, listening to what the science says, and recommending and executing on policies that will actually save lives, despite the staunch opposition you face from the White House. You are the true heroes. So although Trump has been released from Walter Reed and has returned to the White House, he isn't out of the woods yet. If we look back at one of Trump's former advisors, Herman Cain, who died from coronavirus after attending Trump's Tulsa rally back in June, Cain died 37 days after he tested positive. There were many ups and downs in his condition until it rapidly worsened before he passed away. This Saturday is day 9 for Trump, which marks a milestone for a majority of patients in their recovery. This is when most immune systems have their major reaction, and it can go multiple different ways. 1, it can properly address the virus and create the antibodies necessary to fight off the virus. Or it can completely overreact, which can lead to things such as massive blood clots and a stroke, all of which have an increased likelihood when, the patient is in their 70s and obese. It's honestly fascinating how many conservatives are coming out and praising Trump for recovering so fast from the virus, when there's an overwhelming likelihood that he will be back in Walter Reed very soon. Even the best of doctors in medicine can't save a patient who willingly disregards safety measures. So I'd pay close attention to what happens this weekend because this will determine the first major wave of his immune system's response. Oh, and I'm still waiting on the outrage from the pro-life community because Trump was given a stem cell cocktail as treatment, and stem cells come from aborted fetuses, but we all know that's not going to happen. Alright, so moving on to our next topic, which is the vice presidential debate that actually just wrapped up. Just wanted to let you know this will be much more extemporaneous. The previous segment was much more written out, and I planned a lot more. This is more of just the notes that I recorded as I was watching the debate, things that stood out to me and I think will be of value for me to discuss. So, obviously, the debate started out, and obviously the first thing front and center, we knew it would be front and center. Obviously, it is it can't be arguably, the most important thing facing our country right now, which is the pandemic, COVID-19. So COVID-19, right from the onset was discussed, and Kamala went right after Trump on COVID, or, specifically Pence. But honestly, we're talking about administrations here, whether it be a Trump administration or a Biden administration. So, Kamala spent no time at all hesitating going after it about the situation, how many Americans have died from this, how many have gone homeless because of this, how many have lost their job, things of that sort. So she took no time about that, and then talked about the inaction and lying. She talked about how, despite the fact that, I'll probably get into this more, the Trump administration, Trump and Pence both, try to tout their action of shutting down travel to China back in January. They, shut down on like January 26th or something like that, but yet didn't do anything with the time that they gained. So still thousands of people came back into the United States after that, many of whom were not tested, many of whom were not given expectations to quarantine or social distance. So it was not as effective as they would have hoped. So Kamala doesn't really mention that at all. She just mentions the inaction, but not how it wasn't even effective in the first place, or as effective as they like to say. So that in itself was very interesting to see it pan out. And then Kamala goes on and talks about the Biden plan. Pence tried to say this, and I honestly could not disagree more. He talked about how the Biden plan looks so much like the Trump plan because it includes contact tracing, safe vaccine development, personal protective equipment. Yeah, but like they would actually do it, Like, I mean, you haven't done it. Like, you say you've done it, but as Kamala pointed out, it's not working. Whatever they're doing, it's not working. You can't just say we have a plan and we're following it. Yeah, if you have a plan and you're following it and it's failing miserably, then you might need a new plan, or maybe like a new administration or a new president after all of these failures. So and also the Trump administration has been against contact tracing. Like literally, they have been. The CDC offered to help with the White House contact tracing due to the rampant spread of COVID within the White House due to their irresponsibility. The CDC was like, hey, why don't we help you guys out? Even though you guys were super irresponsible, we want to help you out and help with your contact tracing so that we can figure out where this virus originally came from. And the White House was like, no, we got it. No, they don't have it. They're just going to let it keep spreading. I think they think they're immune or something. Or the issue is they can all go get socialized healthcare and medicine for free at your taxpayer expense while you suffer, and they can just continue to profit off of the great healthcare that you're getting while at the same time trying to repeal your access to healthcare, which we're going to get in. So Pence was asked, why have so many people died from this pandemic? This was one of the many questions that he immediately dodged. He did not get into this. He literally just went into the fact that the Trump administration always puts the health of Americans first. What a joke. Are you kidding me? With a global pandemic with over 200,000 Americans dead, and the president still says it's just like the flu. He still says that. He's still downplaying it. He literally just tweeted yesterday that it is less lethal than the flu, which is categorically false, which I mentioned earlier in this episode. It is categorically false that is the case. He has said from the beginning he was trying to downplay it. We'll get into that more because that was a discussion. And it is just a flat out lie. If and this is what I have to say about it, if the Trump administration cares about your life, they do a pretty shitty job of showing it. Because apparently their strategy of showing you that they care about your life is to take away your health care and your access to a good job. That is literally their way of showing it. So it is completely nonsensical that is a claim that he makes. He also brings this up, and I've discussed this before, and I'll probably have to reiterate it multiple times because it was brought up multiple times throughout this debate, was that Joe Biden called Trump xenophobic for shutting down travel to China. This is not true. I'm going to keep saying this over and over until the claim stops being made or until people understand how false this is. Joe Biden responded to a Trump tweet that called Trump basically talked about his travel ban, but then also called it, as he's done before, the Chinese virus. And Biden pointed to a history of xenophobia and bigotry against people from other countries. So yeah, Biden is correct. He was not, and there was nothing to point that he was directly pointing to him shutting down travel, but rather calling it the Chinese virus, which has, and this is a fact, led to more hate crimes against Asian Americans. So that is a fact. So to suggest that it was because of that and not because of Trump's divisive and xenophobic rhetoric in the past is just nonsensical, and it keeps being brought up as a false talking point. So let's just shut that down right now. And they just keep touting the shutdown of travel from China, which we talked about is not effective on its own. It's like doing one thing. You take the first step and then don't do steps 2 through 10. Great, you did the first step, but you didn't do anything else. You can't just keep talking about that and then not institute any other meaningful mitigation measures and even downplay those mitigation measures, as you admitted. So I don't even. This is so dysfunctional. I feel like I can't even address this honestly because it's so dysfunctional that I don't even feel like I'm talking about people who have any sort of competence because they don't. They don't have any idea what they're doing. And if they do, they just don't care. And that is the most scary part, is that Donald Trump does not care about your life. Donald Trump does not care about your family's life. Donald Trump doesn't care about anyone's life except his own and maybe his family members, but who even knows? All right. So let's keep going. Pence keeps talking about, he's giving his thoughts and prayers to the American people. Well, you gave your thoughts and prayers to school shooting victims, those who don't have access to health care, those who are in the pandemic. Yeah, guess what, buddy? Those aren't working. So maybe you should try something new because your God ain't answering. Okay? God seems to be pretty damn absent from this entire pandemic. So you might want to get on the phone with him or start taking some fucking action. All right. So yeah, Pence said, thoughts and prayers. And he says that the American people, and they have promoted, what is it called? The health of each other and your neighbor over themselves. Really? Really? You think you're promoting that? And what was it? Susan Price, I forgot her exact name. Susan Page, my bad. The USA Today reporter who moderated this debate, basically she said, or at least talked about, how they said, okay, so look at, let's mention the Amy Coney Barrett ceremony where they brought Amy Coney Barrett as a ceremony to celebrate her nomination and announce it. And they said, okay, so that was a super spreader event, which was correct. Many people, such as Senator Mike Lee, such as former Governor Chris Christie, who contracted coronavirus. And basically, Susan Page said, and this is very true, how can you expect the American people to abide by your mitigation efforts when you at the White House aren't even abiding by them? And Pence tried to say that he trusts the American people to do what is necessary to keep people safe. How does that make any sense? You expect the American people to do what it takes to keep each other safe, but you won't even do what it takes to keep the American people safe? What? That makes absolutely no sense at all. Are you telling me the American people are more competent than you? Because I could get behind that. But maybe you should do things that make it seem that what the American people do should be in line with what you do. Because you are the second most powerful person. Not powerful. Technically, actually, the vice presidency is not very powerful. Probably the second most powerful person is Mitch McConnell. Third is Nancy Pelosi. You're still a role model, Mike Pence. You still are. And you're a really shitty role model at that. So come on now. That was such a seguiting point to be yo, American people are responsible, but we're not. What? I didn't even understand that at all. And then an important question was brought up. That was basically with, they asked both candidates, and they asked Senator Harris first, would you trust a vaccine that were to come out right now? Because that's a huge thing. Over 50% of Americans currently say that they would not trust a vaccine that came out right now. Yeah, and rightfully so. I'm absolutely not. I'm a huge proponent and advocator for vaccines. Absolutely, you should have vaccines. But the level of politicization that this vaccine has had, and the Trump administration saying that they want to push out this vaccine before Election Day, when people like the CDC director Robert Redfield say it most likely won't be available to the general public until the summer of 2021. Is just complete evidence that this is 100% politicized and they're rushing the process. So absolutely, Kamala was right in her response. She said, would you trust a vaccine? Yes, she said she would trust a vaccine from doctors like Dr. Fauci and those experts, but sure as hell not from Donald Trump. And that is 100% true, that you should not trust anything that comes from Donald Trump when it comes to a vaccine, because it is purely for his own reelection. This is basically Donald Trump's whole strategy. From the beginning, he failed miserably. So his desire or his plan all along was just to keep failing and failing and failing. And he somehow thinks that a vaccine, one, is going to come way sooner than it actually will, and also that a vaccine is going to solve all the problems. I can just be completely irresponsible, but then suddenly we're going to have a vaccine and it's going to solve everything. Well, if you didn't realize, vaccines, not only do people have to take them, and if you're really damn irresponsible, why would people trust vaccines? As well as the fact that, yeah, people have to take them. So if people don't take them and there's not herd immunity, then clearly that would be an issue. Also, vaccines might only have, and this is what CDC Director Robert Redfield said, a 70% effective rate. Basically, it depends on how your immune system responds to the vaccine. So if people's immune systems don't respond, or if people don't take it, a combination of both, a vaccine may not be as effective as you think it is. And Robert Redfield said this, and Trump tried to keep denying it and say this wasn't true, or he misspoke, even though he didn't misspeak. He's just speaking the truth, and Trump doesn't like the truth if it doesn't align with his narrative. But he literally said, okay, even when a vaccine comes out, yeah, he'll get the vaccine, but he's still going to wear a mask. And all of you should too, because even just the regular surgical masks, I wear an N95, I suggest you all do as well, but even just the blue surgical masks you get at the doctor's office, those have a 95% protection rate from the virus. And when the vaccine might only have a 70%, hell yeah, a mask is going to be more effective than the vaccine. So absolutely, vaccines are good, but when they're rushed and politicized and make people not trust the process, it only contributes to the already incredibly anti-intellectual, anti-vaccine narrative we have. And people who are anti-vax right now have to be just loving all of this, because the process is getting screwed up, and it's giving them an opportunity to basically just be like, oh, vaccines don't work. Look at how terrible all this is. Like, yeah, you know what? It's because we have an incompetent president, not because vaccines don't work. It's because when you have an incompetent person making or trying to rush the process of a vaccine, then obviously that's going to be the case. But it has nothing to do with vaccines and all about the person directing the process. So on that front, if a vaccine comes out, absolutely, if the scientists say it, all of you, everyone should take it. Absolutely. But if it gets rushed out before election day and there's companies just trying to, shove shit into people's arms without any sort of approval by scientists, no way. It's 100% political. So yeah. All right. And then Kamala starts to talk about, I guess, on a little bit. Oh, wait, I want to actually go back to this. This was really, really, really funny. Kamala kept saying, or Pence kept saying that Kamala was like, or Harris was saying that, or like delegitimizing the process of vaccines. Like, he kept misconstruing it. If the scientists say it's okay, obviously, yeah. But Pence kept saying that she was delegitimizing it. How is appealing to science delegitimizing a process? Oh, maybe because Pence doesn't believe in science, and we see when we get to stuff like climate change that he clearly doesn't believe in science. So, or facts for that matter. But yeah, so that makes 100% sense. So I don't really understand where she's going with that. But yeah. And then Pence, like, it was very odd. Pence kept saying that Harris should stop playing politics with people's lives. You don't understand how loud I laughed when literally Pence said stop playing politics with people's lives, when literally the 200,000 plus people who are dead right now are completely the Trump administration playing politics with people's lives. The Trump administration and Trump himself admittedly downplaying the threat so he didn't create panic. And what he means by that is panic the stock market and upset his wealthy donors. He literally played politics with every single person's life in this country. So that was literally the most hypocritical and honestly just literal, like, infuriating thing to see Pence get up there and tell Harris not to play politics with people's lives when that's what the Trump administration has been doing for the past 7 months. It was disgusting. So, all right. Kamala went on to talk about her record, how it plays well with Biden, and they both, have similar experiences. Yeah, I mean, similar experiences, but also very different. I'd say, Harris is much more progressive. It was really funny because the Trump administration as well as the Pence administration have worked very hard to try to paint Harris as this like radical left, person, and and it was really funny because what was it? Pence made this absurd claim of like, oh, Harris was the most progressive person in the Senate, more progressive than Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. There's no way she is at all. Like, she is not more progressive than Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So I don't know where he got that from. I mean, but Kamala took it well. And that was really like, that was really appreciated. Kamala did not just say, no, I'm not. Like, she was like, yeah, I am progressive and I'm proud of it. And I think that was good. Obviously, she's nowhere near where our country needs. Biden is nowhere near where our country needs in terms of policy to actually help the American people. But to see someone who did not cower away from the label of like the left or the progressive left was honestly refreshing, and I think something that needs to be more mainstream. And I really applaud Kamala for her ability to just take that label with pride, whether she meant to or not. That's what it came off as. So yeah. Pence also is very interesting because she also gets into this idea about how the Biden administration is trying to push like different mandates, things like, mask mandates and things of that sort, and like healthcare mandates and, mandate people having healthcare. It was really interesting because then very soon on in the discussion, he talked about how great Walter Reed Medical Facility was and how well they've helped the president. Hey buddy, I'm going to get close to the mic for this. You do realize that Walter Reed Medical Facility is government run. Whoa. Yeah, it's funded by taxpayer dollars. It's funded by your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars. We pay for it. Maybe the quality is so great. One, because the president can access it because, I don't know, maybe he's the president, as I talked about before. But also, yeah, it's government run. There's no private company trying to profit off of it. No, It's just taxpayer dollars going to that. And they have some of the best treatments in the entire world. So you're trying to say that universal healthcare and government-run healthcare is so terrible, yet the same people who say it's so terrible take advantage of it when they need it. So it doesn't exactly work, but, of course that's how it goes. Pence, honestly, and this is what kept happening, and I mean, I can name it on multiple occasions, but Pence would often, one, he kept going over and over. Like sometimes he would take 30 to 45 extra seconds after Susan Page, the moderator, would be like, okay, your time's up. Like, please let Miss Harris or Senator Harris respond. And he would just keep going. And also there'd be times when, one, if he didn't want to answer a question or he felt it was relevant, he would just go back to a question. Like they'd ask him a question on abortion, and for a while he'd just go back to like healthcare or something and just start talking about that. So he literally just was not cooperating and did not answer the question. Now we're going to get to the part where Harris did dodge questions as well. Like I'm 100% acknowledging that, but it's also looking at the level of questions they dodge. Harris dodged a question on we'll get to this in a second and I want to talk about it, but I'll mention it now to just make a comparison. Harris dodged a question involving the Supreme Court, whether that Biden and Harris would pack the Supreme Court. I'm so glad they're not answering no to this. And then Pence dodged a question on why have so many people died due to the coronavirus pandemic and how will you protect people with pre-existing conditions? So Supreme Court and how many justices, or hey, how are you going to keep people from fucking dying? Yeah, which one do you think is more important question to answer? I would say that the latter is more important, those two questions. So I'd say that Pence's dodging of questions is much more important and indicative of the fact that they don't have answers to these questions. They do not have answers to how they will save lives. It is that simple. All right. So moving on a little bit. Yeah, Kamala, and they're talking about, what is it also? They were talking about transparency because I think it was talking about how like the president's medical records, both of them are very old. Trump is 74 and Biden is 78. Both of them, when sworn in, would be the oldest president to take office. And this is obviously important. Both of them as crucial roles. Pence is 61. Kamala is much younger. I did not look up how old Kamala is. Probably don't want to guess her age if she ever listens to this, which she probably never will, but don't want to guess it wrong. But yeah, they are obviously much younger. So it's very possible that one of them will possibly be president. So that is an important question. And I guess Harris did this pivot. It was a pivot. This is something that happens in debates. It can be frowned on. It can be applauded. But especially when it comes down to Harris in particular, she basically said, all right, let's talk about transparency. Joe Biden has been transparent, talked about medical records and stuff like that. He has been pretty transparent, by the way. While Donald Trump has literally like told his doctor the words to use on one of his medical checks. Like he's literally like forced his doctor, or he wrote the statement that his doctor put out. So literally Donald Trump is like not okay with anything other than like, oh my gosh, he's in the best shape in the entire world, or like some I remember there was this one Trump medical report where it was like Trump has like the most outstanding health of any patient I've ever had, and this is like a famous doctor who sees like tons of people, so it made no sense, and then the doctor admitted that it was actually Trump who wrote that. So like Trump is not transparent when it comes to his medical records at all. I mean, Trump's not transparent with any of his records, but why would it be any different with that? But then not Pence. Harris does this good thing. I mean, she transitions to transparency on stuff like taxes, and she talks about how Trump has paid $750 in income tax over the past couple of years, like, and hasn't paid income tax in 10 out of the past 15 years. And absolutely, I mean, that's something to look at, that the president is paying less income tax than the average school teacher. Think about that. That is how messed up our system is. When people like Donald Trump are paying less. And this is very important. She also talked about the fact that he owes $483 million in debt. And she talked about this, which is important. Debt means you owe it to someone. And if you owe almost $500 million, $500 million. If you owe $500 million to someone, you better damn well think that they have a lot of influence over you. So this is a serious conflict of interest. I mean, Trump has had so many conflict of interest. Let's talk about the emoluments clause and the fact that you're not even supposed to own businesses or have assets while you're president, because that exists as a conflict of interest. Jimmy Carter was literally forced to sell his small peanut farm to become president because they thought that somehow people could be funneling money through his peanut farm. But Donald Trump has just whole like hotel empires that he still is integrally involved in, despite the fact, I gave it to my children. Yeah, okay, you give it to your children. You think you really don't still have influence within that? Like, come on now. Okay. But regardless, yeah, if the president owes $500 million, that person is going to have a lot of influence, and we have a right to know who he owes that money to. Because if it's some bank in Russia, then yeah, they have a lot of power. They have $500 million worth of power in the president of the United States over our country. And that is a huge conflict of interest that we as citizens should know about. And then Pence goes on to say that the president has paid tens of millions of dollars in taxes. Awesome. Then release the damn tax returns. Like, if this is so true, why am I getting confused? Like, I get so flustered. There's nothing to be flustered about. He's not releasing his tax returns because he's not paying taxes. It's that simple. So for us to get like surprised, I don't understand why he wouldn't just release his tax returns. I don't know why he just wouldn't let witnesses testify and release documents and allow people to speak. Oh, maybe because he's a criminal. Like it's not anything surprising. Like, come on now. Like we're being naive if we really think that any of this has any sort of like complication to it. It's as simple as we see it, and we see it as simply as it is. Donald Trump is a career con man. He's scammed people out of businesses, stood them up, and then when they try to sue him, he gets out of it with large lawyers and large legal contracts. So this is not that surprising, but yeah, there it goes. So then they get into, what is it called? We get into the economy, which was a very important aspect. And there's a really interesting thing. The biggest thing that Pence tried to tout, and this is really funny. I think talking about the economy right now is so funny. Because one, it has gone to shit. But two, because literally Donald Trump and Mike Pence, or at least the Trump administration, has trashed the economy. So when they try to talk about building the world's greatest economy, congrats, but you also just like destroyed it. Like, I don't even understand this. This is like if you have a child and you kill the child. And then you say, but I've had a child. Yeah, but you also fucking killed it. Like, I don't care about the original thing. You destroyed it. I mean, that might have been an extreme reference. And I'm obviously going completely extemporaneous here. I don't have a script written up. So weird things like that might happen. So give me a little bit of a break there. But yeah, so it talks about the Trump tax cuts. And these were an abysmal failure by every single metric. Pence keeps talking about how the average family got around $2,000 in saved in taxes and tax returns. Yeah, because the average tax return before the Trump tax cuts was around $2,000. The tax cuts did nothing. The tax cuts did nothing to help those who were not the top 10%. People's tax refunds for those who made less than 10%, who were not the top 10% of earners, they increased by an average of $50. Congrats. As corporations got tens of thousands, if not hundreds, and even millions of dollars in tax cuts, you maybe got $50 extra. Yay! Like, that's nothing compared to the amount. This theory of trickle-down economics once again has failed. Or maybe it hasn't failed because it was literally designed to not trickle down, so you could say it's working exactly as expected. So this whole notion that Pence keeps talking about how amazing these tax cuts are, they weren't at all. They were not. They were an abysmal failure designed to help the top 1%, which our entire system is designed to help the top 1%. So there's that. All right, let's see, where are we at now? And then this is what I don't understand, is that, and I mean, this is what Harris talks about. She talks about how we need to invest in infrastructure, energy, and education. All very true things. All very true, and things that are laid out in policy on the Biden website. And then this is a claim that I don't understand. And this is what literally what is it called? And I've addressed this in previous episodes, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating stuff. But the same dumb talking points are brought up, so I have to address them again, because the same talking points that were brought up by Trump are brought up by Pence, because Pence is probably just a little bit more calm. He's like Trump if he like took LSD and like, I don't know, stopped smoking. I don't know. Does Donald Trump smoke? I don't know what happened to his voice. Just whatever. Sorry. Tangent. But yeah, I mean, Pence just lies more eloquently is what I would say. He literally just says false things more eloquently, and he's more scary because like he's more like he's oh my God, he's so like messed up in the head when it comes to like social issues of like gay marriage and shit. He was like advocating for like conversion and shock therapy and stuff. So don't even get me started. That's another reason I don't want Trump to die, because Pence in office might even be worse, because he might actually be able to get stuff done. But yeah. So, but he also brings us up and back to the point about how Biden in the Great Recession, it was the slowest recovery of like, I guess, an economic recovery. What you don't understand, and I will say this again, and I will make this comparison again, is that slow recoveries from recessions are often good, because it means you are laying a strong economic foundation for recovery, which leads to prolonged economic prosperity. And this was very much the case when it came to the Great Recession. I will compare this again because it's a beautiful comparison. Let's talk about the Great Depression, not the Great Depression, sorry, just the Depression of 1920. Have you ever heard of it? Probably not, because it recovered really fast because the government didn't do anything. And when the government didn't do anything, yeah, it led to a quick recovery, but guess what? There was no economic foundation laid. So less than a decade later, there was the Great Depression. It was a direct result, and due to the fact that the Obama administration, as along with Joe Biden, who led the recovery, it led to a slower recovery and things such as bailing out the auto industry to ensure that industries did not just leave and go to other countries like is largely happening right now, but also that it laid a strong foundation for economic recovery so that we had a prolonged recovery. Biden's work in the recession recovery is what handed Donald Trump a growing economy for the first 3 years of his presidency until he trashed it. So to like attribute this to Trump at all when they talk about the black unemployment rate being so low and all this, yeah, okay, we had over 118 months, like up from like 2011 to, and I'm actually taking these numbers, I don't have them on my sheet, so they're from a previous episode. If I miss say a number, I apologize. But from 2011 to February of 2020, we had 118 months of positive economic growth, if I remember correctly. I may be a couple months off or something. 77 of those, and I know that to be true, were under Obama. So to claim that somehow Trump did something by literally just continuing a trend, and actually it did slow down, by the way. Like, Obama's rising economy did slow down from Trump. So yes, it kept increasing, but not at the rate of Obama, by the way, just to let you know. And by the way, I actually don't support the Obama economy. The Obama economy, or the economy in general of our country, is designed to help rich people. So yeah, the economy was doing great, and it was doing well, but it was still doing well and benefited the top 1% primarily, as the economy is designed to do. So, I mean, I don't know if we can attribute that directly to Barack Obama or just the capitalistic nature that we currently live under. But yes, that is exactly kind of how that went down. So yes, in summary, the slower recovery is not something to criticize people of, because it laid the foundation for a stronger economic foundation that led to a longer economic growth until the economy was trashed by Trump. So yeah. All right. Yeah, Pence once again lied about what Kamala said involving the auto industry as well as the taxes. Because what was it? Because Biden's talked about this, how taxes will not increase on anyone making under $400,000 a year. And this is true because he's going to raise the top marginal tax bracket. And this is very true. If he raises the corporate tax rate from 21% to something like 50%, and then raises the top marginal tax bracket, he could fund this without raising taxes on the middle class. It is possible. The math checks out. I'd be happy to do a podcast exactly on how that works if some of you are interested. But in particular, exactly how that works is that in this, and mind you that the effective tax rate is always much lower when you think 50%. Oh my God. Yeah, no, that's not exactly how taxes work. But yeah, so this whole thing, because Pence literally, after Kamala talked about taxes, was literally just like, oh no, Biden is going to raise your taxes, take your money. It was just fear mongering. He was just trying to fear monger people away from voting for Biden because he thinks they're just going to take all his money away. And unfortunately, many of those people are not competent enough to see right through Pence's stone cold lies and actually see what the real policy is here. So there's that. And there was a huge talk about, does Biden want to ban fracking and fossil fuels? Literally, Pence just lied here. Yeah, Biden said, and this is where everything gets so misconstrued, and this happens on both sides, by the way. I'm not even going to say that this is just like a Republican problem, because I don't appreciate the Democrats whatsoever at all when it comes to trying to misconstrue leftist ideologies whatsoever at all. But when it comes down to specifically fossil fuels, Pence was saying, oh, Biden wants to ban fracking and fossil fuels. Yeah, okay, I hope you don't realize that there's a difference between banning future fracking and fossil fuels and current fracking. Basically, he would not give out more permits to more people to basically fuck up our earth even more. That's the plan. So he's burning. He said they would not give out grants to future fracking companies. Those who are doing it can still do it until we hopefully get to more renewable sources of energy. So yeah, Pence, and this was a huge question that he dodged that I mentioned earlier, was the plan of healthcare. There was a question, and this was brought up by Susan Page, which, good question by the moderator. Look, you've said you don't want to strip, and you won't strip away healthcare or healthcare from those with pre-existing conditions. Over 20, what is it? I think around like 50 to 129 million Americans who have pre-existing conditions. That you're not going to strip healthcare away from them, yet you have failed to produce a plan on healthcare. So what are you going to do when you're currently challenging the ACA into the Supreme Court with a possible another conservative justice that you may get on the court that is against healthcare, or has spoken out against it, against the Affordable Care Act? What are you going to do to solve it? And he did not come up with an answer and pivoted and did not directly talk about it. He actually went back to a previous question, which he did a lot in this debate, is he did not actually answer the question and just kept going back to previous ones. So there's that. All right. So what's next? Let's talk about climate change, or the one candidate that believes in it and the other that doesn't believe in science. So yeah, literally, I hate this argument, and it's brought up so much, is Pence and Trump have both said this, that we currently have the cleanest air and the cleanest water. Hey, maybe that's because the pandemic has halted mass amounts of travel and people aren't going as many places because of that. And therefore, when there's less people on the road and less planes flying and less people commuting, there's going to be less pollution. That's just kind of what happens. That is no fault of your own. It just means you failed so badly and allowed this pandemic to go on for so long that it has led to not your intention at all, but longer, like more effective, I guess, or like more positive economic or environmental outcomes, positive. So yeah, that's great, but it's not because of any of your policies. It's not because of your environmental agenda, which has done stuff like pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord and rolled back EPA regulations. So yeah, that's just misleading. Pence says that Trump listens to scientists. This literally could not be farther from the truth when Trump literally responds to a scientist talking about the wildfires with "science doesn't know." Yeah, yeah, great, good job. Yeah, and then he goes on to how the free market drives innovation and environmentalism. Oh my God, this is this whole topic about free market environmentalism that I actually researched for a while and wrote a position paper for, just for the fun of it. It's on my website, by the way. You can check it out. It's basically like, why would free market environmentalism? I read that and I cringe, because to think that corporations would do things in the interest of the people when they can make a profit is just like nonsensical. Like they will pollute the fuck out of our earth if that means that they get profit. They don't care. They literally don't care. Like that is 100% how that works. So to think that somehow like capitalism is going to solve global warming is just nonsensical. So, all right. And Pence did not say he believes in man-made climate change. Like why are we in 2020 and we're still debating whether or not shooting fucking fumes into the atmosphere is going to put holes in the ozone and shit? Like literally this is just science. And he says that Pence will listen to the science when the overwhelming scientific consensus says that we contribute overwhelmingly and are the primary cause of climate change. So no, he doesn't believe in science at all. He's a fucking Catholic, dude. Christian, come on now. All right. So I noted this because it was funny, and honestly, I feel like this is gonna like become a meme or something. But like, there was just honestly a fly, like a fly, like the insect, just literally chilling on Pence's head for like a solid few minutes. Maybe he was like trying to, I don't know, knock some sense into him, or like, you know, suck all the evil out of his head. Maybe it was a horsefly, but I don't know. So yeah, there's that. And then this is what I hate, and this is what is constantly discussed when it comes down to, you know, environmental policy or things of that sort, or like, you know, healthcare. The question of how are you going to pay for it always gets brought up. How are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for that? Oh my God, that is so expensive. How are you going to pay for that? But they never talk about how you're going to pay for the trillions of dollars in tax cuts that go to the top corporations. They never ask that question. They don't. It's only with policies that will help you, because the politicians don't work for you. They work for the corporation. So they're going to do things in their interest. And if there's something that's designed to help you, they are inherently going to be more skeptical of it. That's why they're trying to cut Medicare and Medicaid. Like literally, they're just literally trying to cut away care to seniors. So there's that. And on that topic, the reason I talked about that is that Pence keeps criticizing the $2 trillion environmental plan that Biden has, which, yes, it's correct. It is a start to the Green New Deal. Nowhere close to what we need, but yes, it is a start to that. But yet again, they can literally just pump $1.5 trillion in the economy when the stock market started to go down due to the pandemic, to literally raise prices for 30 minutes. They can do that. They have the money to do it. It's just that it doesn't benefit rich people, so they're not going to do it. So on that tone of the economy, they got into talking about China. Obviously, the trade war with China has been disastrous. This is where I will never understand. Like, I guess, I mean, no, of course I'll understand it. I need to stop saying I don't understand, because I 100% understand what's going on. It angers me. So maybe I say I pretend to not understand because it's frustrating. But literally, Republicans in particular, even Democrats and stuff like that, are so hypocritical when it comes to government spending and stuff like that. Because I remember back during the recession, we'll talk about it again, and I talk about how Obama bailed out the auto industry to stop them from going under. And the government and the Republicans were calling him a huge socialist. Yeah, by the way, I don't even understand that. Actually, I do understand. I need to stop saying that because I do understand. It's just that they're dumb. They were basically calling him a huge socialist. Yeah, no, socialism isn't when the government spends money. It's when the workers own the means of production. So stop it. It's not like when the government spends money, they're suddenly socialist. But yeah, so basically Obama spent money to bail out the auto industry. By the way, all of which was paid back with interest, and he was called, like, you know, a huge government spender. Huge Keynesian school, but Keynesian's based. You guys don't know what based means. I'm so sorry. It's like an online thing. It means like cool. So sorry if I say that. That might come out. But when getting into that, all of that was paid back with interest. Now, Trump's trade war with China in particular, when it comes down to the trade war with China, it was a massive failure. We lost billions of dollars to China, and billions of dollars we had to go to bailing out our farmers, and manufacturing jobs got lost to China and things of that sort. So it was a huge failure by every single mean. Tariffs are just an absolute failure to any economy. I mean, if you talk with any competent economist, tariffs just hurt the producers and the consumers within the country that imposes them. So it does not work. But yeah. And then when it gets to the topic of China, of course, Pence immediately has to pivot to blaming China for the coronavirus. Yeah. So you see, you're basically like, at this point, I say it's like someone like gets hit by a car and they're laying there and you just keep blaming the person who hit them with a car instead of calling 911 and like solving the problem. Like, congrats. We've established that China fucked up. But at a certain point, you have to stop pointing fingers and solve the damn problem. And that never happened because it was just easier to point fingers and actually do what had to be done to mitigate this pandemic. So there's that. What else do we have here? All right. So if we get into that, he keeps blaming China for it. And then they get into the Bob Woodward interview, which I think is really interesting. If you haven't looked at it, Bob Woodward, like, I'm still mad at that dude because Trump downplayed the virus and Woodward didn't say anything. Like, Woodward could have saved lives by revealing back in March and February when he was meeting with the president, because Trump had like over 18 interviews with Bob Woodward, which is like, I'm surprised he had so much access for the president just to literally just incriminate himself on tape. But yeah, Bob Woodward had a ton of access to the president and was basically telling Trump was telling him, yeah, I wanted, and this is on tape, I've always wanted to downplay it. I've always wanted to downplay it, didn't want to create a panic. Obviously, he just didn't want to panic the stock market, which would upset his wealthy donors and wealthy investors. But yeah, and Woodward didn't do anything with the information. So it's, that was pretty selfish and messed up. Woodward says, I thought he was talking about China, not the United States. Come on, dude. Like, use your brain. You're just trying to get out of responsibility because he wanted to save it for his book instead of saving American lives. So whatever, we can move on from that. But yeah. So yeah, the Trump administration was briefed by Xi Jinping, by China, back in January that this was a real threat, that it was airborne, that it was spread much faster. Trump admits on tape that the lethal rate of COVID is like 5 to 1. I mean, I don't even know the numbers now. I think it's between 3 to 4, but okay, still fine. He overestimates that, but he doesn't release it to the public and says that this is no flu, and then comes out to the public and says, it's just a flu, everyone. Don't worry. And to this day, keeps tweeting about that, despite the scientific information on that could not be more clear. It's not that. So Pence once again makes the false xenophobia reference to Joe Biden involving the shutdown. I addressed that before. He was addressing Trump's xenophobic rhetoric in general and calling it the Chinese virus within the tweet, not the fact that he shut down travel to China. So just stop it. And then he talks about moving the embassy to Jerusalem. This was a terrible move. I mean, if you're trying to create peace between Israel and Palestine, which I guess you're not because you're just like so unbelievably pro-Israel, then yeah, I guess you'll move it. But then that kind of just destroys any possibility of the U.S. to be a impartial arbiter, which we've tried to be very often, is to be an impartial arbiter between the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which, we're not, because we give so much money to Israel in which we have no military bases. By the way, if you're a Republican and I guess you're pro-life or whatever that's supposed to mean, or against abortion, yeah, by the way, I hope you know that they provide government-funded abortions, meaning that our money and your taxpayer dollars go to Israel, and then that money goes towards paying like for abortions and stuff. So guess you can't support Israel and be pro-life then because they pay for women to get abortions. By the way, they do have a lower abortion rate too. I mean, I don't want to get too much into that, but it's almost like, keeping it safe and legal lowers the rate. Whatever. That we're saving that for the third part of my podcast series on abortion, which should be coming out soon, by the way. So stay tuned for that. So yeah. Then they get to talking about Qasem Soleimani. And, that whole incident back in January, the first thing with the new year, I mean, I remember I was like, hey, maybe 2020 will be a good year. 3 years in, president orders the killing of a general, like, without approval of Congress. And I'm like, yeah, this year is going to be fucked. Little did I know it would get way worse than I thought, but that's how that goes. So, yeah, I mean, look, yeah, Soleimani was not a great guy. I'll agree with that, but killing him was a terrible move. One, because Soleimani was instrumental in fighting ISIS, by the way, and ISIS is still alive in parts of Syria and Iraq and Libya and stuff like that. Like, even though the Trump administration like say, oh, they're so decimated, yeah, they've been defeated and crippled, but they are still very much alive. And if we don't address the humanitarian crisis going on there, then yeah, they're just going to rise again. Because I'll mention this again. You guys should go look at my other podcast, which I'll link below. It's called Actually Making America Great, and it talks about the war on terrorism and how that literally creates more terrorists. And that's what we've done now. So it's very possible that ISIS and the caliphate will just rise back up because there's so many people who are pissed that we've been bombing the shit out of them for years. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, so Trump didn't notify Congress about Soleimani. So that was one wrong, because he literally did not even notify the people who have to deal with the repercussions of this. And also, he didn't consider the repercussions of that. And Iran launched a counterstrike against one of our bases in Iraq and literally gave the military members brain injuries, which Donald Trump referred to as, they're just headaches. Like, if you don't need any more, if you need more proof that, or if you don't need more proof that Donald Trump is unbelievably could not care less about our service members. But there's that. So this is the issue. And this is why I'm so quick to believe the Atlantic article that he called military members suckers and losers, despite the fact that it not being completely verified, is because it's a pattern of behavior. It's a pattern of behavior of Donald Trump, not just not caring about our military, but anyone who is not himself. So it does not surprise me at all. And that is the case. And there's nothing else to really say about that. But yeah, so we talked about Soleimani there. He didn't notify Congress. I mean, Trump is just really about himself. And getting into that same vein, Russia has announced bounties on Americans' heads. Kamala talked about this. And if we look at that, Trump has had multiple calls with Putin, and he has not mentioned it once. Maybe because, he's Putin's lapdog. Like that's literally how this goes. Like, it's so unbelievable how literally like much Trump will suck up to Putin and no one cares. Not even the Republicans who are like so pro-America, anti like communism. Cuba's not even communist. Not Cuba. Cuba's not communist either, but Russia's not communist whatsoever at all. But yeah, in general, like you'd think that like the like staunch like patriots of America would be against that, but no, they're just honestly people who now support Trump. They're not patriotic. I hope you know that. I hope you know that they don't support America. They support Trump. They're not patriots, they're Trump supporters. And there's a very big difference. And someone who says they're a patriot and a Trump supporter is a complete hypocrite, because Trump is so unbelievably anti-American, so unbelievably anti-democracy, so unbelievably anti the American system, that it is impossible to genuinely believe in American ideals and support Donald Trump. It is that simple. No matter where you stand politically, this isn't even political at this point. Donald Trump is a disaster to our country by every metric, beyond just simple left and right politics. This is not a battle between left and right. It's a battle between democracy, authoritarianism, and fascism. But democracy and authoritarianism and fascism. That's what the battle is here. It's not left and right. This is not a partisan thing. I do care. I do care what your economics are. I do care about how you feel about certain issues. But right now, we need to all rally around saving the shambles of our democracy that we have left. We can talk about economics and policy later, but let's save the institution that we have right now before it goes to shit and Donald Trump destroys it even more. So please, no matter where you stand on these issues, just vote American. Don't vote left. Don't vote right. Vote democracy. That's all you got to do. I'm totally chill having conversations surrounding, deficit spending and, healthcare and things like that. But at this point, none of those issues really are the forefront. It's whether or not we even have a democracy to institute and pass those policies that you are interested in, I'm interested in the future. That's what's so important about this. And I hope all of you are able to understand how important and crucial this election is. So, yeah. And Pence just keeps moving back on topics. So, I mean, Pence could really never stay straight on one topic. He kept going back and like referencing in his time he got in the next question, he would backtrack and talk about that. So that's how he would like remove or like stop talking about certain issues such as healthcare and the deadliness of the coronavirus. But yeah. And then they get to the topic of the Supreme Court. So it's definitely very interesting. And like Pence first goes after the fact that Barrett was questioned for her faith and says this is illegitimate. This is 100% legitimate because we have a little thing called separation of church and state, which is instrumental. Because by the way, if you think that we should have religion in the government, I say this all the time to Christians or some people who say like separation of church and state isn't necessary. Awesome. How would you feel if the religion was Islam? that was within our government, and we had an Islamic autocracy instead of a Christian autocracy. Yeah, you get a little worried, don't you? By the way, I don't think that they're vastly different religions by any sense, but regardless, yeah, that's why it's so instrumental, is because the same way you can say, oh yeah, this should be because God says so, that's the same thing as I think that should be the way because God said so. It has no real meaning or word when it comes to policy. So it's instrumental. And Barrett has said on multiple occasions that her religious views take precedent over the law. And if they conflict, she would recuse herself. Yeah, I'm really sorry, but we don't appoint people to the Supreme Court or as Supreme Court justices just to cower when their little book tries to deny people basic human rights. So yeah, we'll get into this because this is the I might discuss this a little bit later surrounding the Supreme Court's decision. This is getting to be a long segment, so I may leave it here and discuss the Supreme Court, literally like Supreme Court justices coming out and saying that they are heavily questioning same-sex marriage in another segment, but 100% forward. Yeah, there is a strong chance, I'll preface it, but there is a strong chance that we will not have legal federal gay marriage in this country, and that will get overturned to the states, and there will be states that reverse that. So yeah, there's that. So sorry about that. One should be criticized if their religious beliefs take precedent over the law. And if their religious beliefs take precedent over our law, then they shouldn't be in the business of interpreting it, and it's that simple. So yeah. When talking about the Supreme Court, he avoids the healthcare question. It's almost like the Supreme Court takes up a case on Obamacare, California versus Texas, or takes a look at it again very soon. And if there's a Judge Barrett on the court, that could drastically change it. Because right now, if it's a 4-4 split, because Roberts has actually been instrumental in upholding the Affordable Care Act. Now, it's interesting and different now, because now that the court is hearing it again, basically the court's reasoning for upholding the Affordable Care Act was that Congress has the power to levy taxes, and the individual mandate that would fine people for not having healthcare could be seen as a tax, and that was in place. But now that the Trump administration and Republicans have levied or lowered that tax to zero, there's no more tax. Can Roberts still uphold that same reasoning? Because that was the reasoning he voted in favor. So it could be a 4-4 split, which if that happens, because there's only 8 and Barrett isn't confirmed, then it would just mean that the ruling would be nullified and the lower court ruling would stand. So that would be interesting to see how that plays out. And this is where Harris dodges one question. There's one question that Harris dodges, and the question is on court packing. She says she basically refuses to answer the question. And I love that, because she refuses to answer because, the answer should be yes. At this point, absolutely. At this point, Republicans have been breaking norms and stereotypes and rules for so long and playing politics with the Supreme Court since denying Merrick Garland a proper Supreme Court hearing. So yeah, they were the ones who made it political. There's no reward for abstemiousness. There's no reward for standing back and letting the other political party fuck people over while you stand back and out of your moral superiority to try to stick by the rules. Republicans have broken the rules so much, Democrats need to get in the game of breaking the rules when it comes to politics. And they're choosing not to, out of moral superiority while Americans suffer. So absolutely pack the court. Get more people on there so things like women's rights and healthcare aren't just completely stripped away from millions of Americans. So absolutely. And I know that Harris and Biden can't say that because that may turn off voters, but it's nice that she's not answering it and saying no, because it's good to know that that's a real possibility. So then we get into the very important topic of racial justice. A topic is brought up. The first question, which I'm very glad they discussed this, is do you believe justice was served in the Breonna Taylor case? Harris says no. Obviously there wasn't. There was literally just new evidence that was brought up in the Taylor case that the officer literally lied about the warrant. We know it wasn't a no-knock warrant, by the way. Anyone says it was a no-knock warrant. I touched on this in a previous segment on Charlie Kirk talking about this. But it was not a no-knock warrant. It was changed to a knock and announce, in which they knocked but did not announce by every single credible witness account. So, and when it was asked about that, and no one was charged in it, and more information was given about the testimony. So there's that as well. But yeah, so Taylor, or at least or Harris, says that their justice was not served. Completely correct. Same question to Pence. Pence is like, well, I trust our justice system. What a fucking joke. The reason you trust our justice system, Mike Pence, is because it works for you. It works for you. It works for me too. It works for straight white men. Same reason police officers, who are usually predominantly straight, or I don't know about straight, but they are white men, which it prominently works for. That's why, is because it works for them and they don't have to worry about it. So he doesn't say that. And obviously, also the district attorney did not, Daniel Cameron, I think it is, did not give them all the evidence. So they could not make a proper judgment. And then Pence goes on to say that the United States isn't systemically racist. Yay, we have a vice president and president who deny facts. I mean, they do it about climate change, so why wouldn't they do it about the overwhelming plurality of evidence that suggests that the institutions in our country are disproportionately set up for them to be affected? And then Trump keeps talking about low black unemployment rate and stuff like that. Yeah, and he keeps talking about how he wants to improve the lives of African Americans. Interesting how you keep saying how you want to improve the lives of African Americans. Meanwhile, a pandemic has ravaged the country, and due to the systemic racism you deny, has led to people who are in more impoverished conditions, therefore do not have the same access to the health care that Donald Trump got at Walter Reed, basically are being disproportionately affected by this virus and dying. So tell me how much you care about African Americans when they are the highest group that is dying at a disproportionate rate. So that you just stop. And then this is really interesting. Pence literally just contradicts himself, because then he starts to say systemic racism doesn't exist, but Kamala Harris, you did disproportionately incarcerate people, predominantly African Americans, for nonviolent drug offenses being marijuana. Like, what? Cool. I'm not saying that Kamala Harris is innocent here. Absolutely, she was jailing people for marijuana, and that's totally wrong. Now, did she get on the Senate and work to pass legislation to legalize it? Absolutely. But if you're saying that African Americans are disproportionately incarcerated for marijuana charges, absolutely they are. And he denied the existence of implicit bias, which exists as well. Absolutely, that exists. Both of those things are very much true, completely. And he still denies it, but he just wants to blame it on Harris, which this makes no sense. So does systemic racism exist? and it's Democrats' fault, which he keeps saying. Fine, I'll work with that, because I actually kind of agree with you that the systemic racism exists and Democrats are complicit in creating it because they don't pass actual policies. But as well, or does it not exist? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't say it doesn't exist because we don't want to do work, but if there are any problems, it's like systemic problems, it's the result of Democrats. So I'm tired of this shit from people who just literally want to have it both ways. And you can't. Because you can't have it both ways. And one, you're wrong if you deny systemic racism, because it's just a literal fact in the academic community, and the plurality of evidence to suggest that it exists is astronomical. You can look at my, what is it called? You can look at a previous podcast in which I talk about that a little bit, not in depth. I could do a more in-depth one, but yeah. So then they talk about the election. This is really crucial because this upcoming election is obviously very important. And Pence keeps talking about how Trump isn't the establishment, and how Trump is not the establishment politician that many people talk about. Yeah, okay, like Joe Biden, who's been in office for 47 years. Yeah, but what you're forgetting is while being in office for less than 4 years, he's already in the back pocket of drug companies, for health insurance companies, the fossil fuel industry, as well as the NRA, things like that. I talked about this in the previous segment. I'll mention it again. This is why 90% of Americans support universal background check for firearms, and even Trump himself has supported it. But at the same time, he literally, every time he meets with the NRA, backs out. So he is literally in the swamp. He is in the swamp, despite the fact that he promised to drain it. I mean, that's not, whatever. He broke another promise. Will be no surprise here. So yeah. And Pence does the same thing as Trump does when it comes to the election. He literally says that he will not, he doesn't say it, but he refuses to say that he will accept the results of the election. I mean, not surprising. He's Trump's puppet. I mean, so, and by association, that means it makes him Putin's puppet, because Trump is Putin's puppet, and if Pence is Trump's puppet, then they all work together, if you follow the logic there. So yeah, basically, there's that. He basically responds to the question in an interesting way. He's like, oh, we are so confident that we are going to win. This isn't relevant. Yeah, that wasn't the question. The question is if you lose, and most likely will lose if this is a fair election. No, there's no question he would lose if this is a fair election. Would you accept the result? And he doesn't. And he keeps just peddling the propaganda and lies surrounding mail-in balloting, and how it's ripe with fraud and other outlandish claims that are just not true. And, I talked about this before. When one party refuses to accept election results, it is no longer about left versus right. It's democracy versus authoritarianism and fascism. That's what this is about. That's why this election is so crucial. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. It has to do with maintaining the shambles of our American democracy left. So don't call yourself a patriot and a Trump supporter, because you are anti-American if you support Donald Trump. It is that simple. So The debate closes out with an interesting thing. I actually thought this was a really, really good idea. Susan Page basically had a question from an 8th grader. An 8th grader asks a question about basically the general gist of the question was, I turn on the TV and all I see is like adults and people like yelling at each other. How can we like have a more productive conversation? And Pence responds, oh, the great thing about America is there's free and open exchange of debate and ideas. Yay. Interesting how you say you want to promote that, yet, you know, the president that you work with, you know, declares anything that doesn't exactly agree with him fake news. So, hypocritical once again, but yeah. So, and he keeps talking about how like America is the freest country. Like by what metric? Free from what? Like freedom to go into medical debt, freedom to be homeless, freedom to not have a high-paying job. Like what? Like I want to understand what he's talking about, because by any freedom index, people are so unbelievably economically disadvantaged by the system of capitalism within the United States that to suggest that they're free when so many of their decisions are predetermined due to their socioeconomic status, it's hard to say that people are actually free. So on that same note, this debate was very interesting to watch. I'd say still probably the same amount of lying. I mean, I'd say probably a little bit less because, you know, Pence was more composed. I mean, this was a more traditional debate because Pence is a more mature person. That doesn't mean he's any less scary than Trump, but like he knows how to not go off the walls. So, I mean, I guess that's one way to look at it positively. But yeah, so this was very good to recap. It looks like I spent a lot of time recapping this, but I'm glad I was able to get through it. I'm looking forward to see what the next presidential debates look like if they end up actually going forward with Trump and Biden. I'm surprised they're actually doing it again after the shit show that was last time. But yeah, so very interesting, and I look forward to seeing what comes next. Yeah, so as I talked about before, I think it's really crucial to see how these, you know, next 27 days play out. You know, we are going to be witnessing a time in history. Really, it is really going to be interesting to see if our democracy is able to uphold the test of Donald Trump. It's going to be a huge test to see what happens. I'm definitely going to be covering it. I'll be covering every bit of it. If there's 2 other presidential debates, I will gladly be covering them here as well as any other topics that end up coming up. Other than that, stay informed, everyone. You know, an authoritarian government is able to rise when the citizenry is not well informed and does not have, I guess, the desire to keep up to date with everything that's going on. So stay informed, encourage everyone you know to get out and vote. And other than that, you know, I hope you all have a great night. This was a long episode, but I think it really helped benefit everyone. So hope you all take care. Thank you.